You'll have it, Mayor Wright said firmly. As of now, you're officially appointed as the town's Wildlife Emergency Coordinator. You'll report directly to me with full authority to requisition what you need. I don't know if I'm qualified for an official position, Mila protested. You've been doing the job for 2 weeks already, Sheriff Wilson pointed out. You've saved dozens of animals, organized volunteers, and created an effective response system. I'd say you're plenty qualified. It's settled then, Mayor Wright said. Mila, this is your operation now. We're counting on you. After the meeting, Mila walked through town in a daze. She had gone from selling fish to being an official wildlife emergency coordinator in just 2 weeks. It was overwhelming. But also, strangely, it felt right. This was what she was meant to do. She went to Dr. Peterson's clinic, where Emma was helping feed the baby raccoons. The little animals had grown stronger and were starting to play with each other. Look, Miss Mila, Emma said. They opened their eyes today. Aren't they cute? Mila smiled, watching the babies tumble over each other. They're doing well. You've taken good care of them. Dr. Peterson says we can release them in a few weeks if they keep improving. We'll take them far from the contaminated area and let them go in a safe part of the forest. That's good, Mila said. Then she added, Emma, I have some news. The contamination is worse than we thought. The cleanup is going to take much longer. Emma's face fell. Does that mean more animals will die? Probably yes, but it also means we can save more if we work hard and don't give up. I won't give up, Emma said firmly. These animals need us. I'll keep helping as long as it takes. Thank you, Emma. I'm going to need dedicated volunteers like you. That evening, Mila held a meeting with all her volunteers. She explained the expanded situation and what it meant. She expected some people to quit. The work was already hard, and now it would last much longer. But no one quit. Instead, more people volunteered. Word had spread about what they were doing, and others wanted to help. By the end of the meeting, Mila had 30 volunteers committed to the long-term effort. We're going to set up a proper organization, Mila explained. Shifts, teams, specializations. I need people for monitoring, water distribution, animal rescue, treatment support, data recording, and public education. Think about what you're good at and what you want to do. Over the next week, Mila transformed the volunteer effort into a professional operation. She created schedules, established protocols, and set up a command center in a spare room at the town hall. She hired 2 part-time assistants to help with coordination. She contacted universities and wildlife organizations, and several graduate students came to help with research and treatment. The operation expanded to cover the entire affected area. Teams patrolled different sections, reporting back regularly. Clean water stations were maintained throughout the region. A rehabilitation center was established in an empty warehouse, with proper facilities for treating and housing recovered animals. Dr. Peterson was overwhelmed with the work, so Mila contacted other veterinarians in nearby towns. Several agreed to help on a rotating basis. She also established relationships with wildlife rehabilitation centers, where some animals could be sent for specialized care. Mila worked 16 hours a day, coordinating everything. She barely slept, surviving on coffee and determination. But she was also happier than she had been in 5 years. This was meaningful work. This mattered. One day, a news crew from the state capitol arrived. They wanted to do a story about the contamination and the rescue effort. Mila tried to avoid them, but Mayor Wright insisted she do the interview. People should know what's happening here, the mayor said, and they should see the person making it happen. So Mila stood in front of the camera, uncomfortable in the spotlight. The reporter, a young woman named Jessica, asked her questions. Ms. Mila, you've organized this entire wildlife rescue operation. What motivated you to do this? Someone had to, Mila said simply. The animals were suffering. We couldn't just ignore that. I understand you used to be a wildlife conservation specialist working internationally. Why did you leave that career? Mila tensed. That was a long time ago. Let's focus on what's happening now. But surely your past experience is relevant. You're using those skills now, aren't you? Yes, Mila admitted. But the past is the past. What matters is the present and the future. We have animals to save and an environment to heal. That's what I'm focused on. Jessica smiled. That's a good answer. One more question. What's the most challenging part of this work?
Mila thought for a moment. Seeing animals in pain and not being able to save all of them. Every animal that dies feels like a failure, even though I know logically that we can't save everyone. But we keep trying. That's all we can do. Keep trying. The interview aired on the state news that evening. Mila watched it at the clinic with Dr. Peterson and Emma. She cringed at seeing herself on TV, but Emma was excited. "You looked so professional," Emma said, "like a real expert." "I am a real expert," Mila said, then stopped. She had said it without thinking. For the first time in 5 years, she had called herself an expert without hesitation or shame. Dr. Peterson noticed. "You're finding yourself again, aren't you?" he said quietly. "Maybe," Mila said, "or maybe I'm finding a new version of myself. I'm not the person I was before, but I'm not just hiding anymore either." "That's growth," Dr. Peterson said. "Be proud of it." That night, Mila looked at the old photograph again. The young Mila in the picture still looked like a stranger, but a familiar stranger now. Maybe you can't go back to who you were, Mila thought, but you can become someone new, someone who includes all your experiences, both good and bad. She turned off the light and went to sleep, ready for another day of hard work. There were still animals to save, and she was the one to do it. A month into the expanded operation, Mila thought things were finally under control. The contamination was being contained, clean water stations were working, and they had rescued and treated over 100 animals. Some had died, but many had recovered and been released back to healthy areas of the forest. Then the weather changed. A storm system moved in, bringing heavy rain. It rained for 3 days straight, turning the forest trails into mud and swelling the creek. Mila stood at the window of the command center, watching the rain pour down. Dr. Foster had warned her this could be a problem. Rain would wash more contaminated soil into the creek, spreading the pollution. It would also dilute the contaminants in some areas while concentrating them in others. And worst of all, it would wash away many of their clean water stations. "We need to check all the stations," Mila told Jake, who was on duty with her. The rain might have knocked them over or contaminated them. "In this weather?" Jake asked, looking at the downpour. "We don't have a choice." "Animals are still drinking. If our clean water is gone, they'll go back to the creek." Jake nodded reluctantly. "I'll get the rain gear." Mila assembled a team of volunteers willing to go out in the storm. Not many people wanted to hike through a muddy forest in pouring rain, but 8 people showed up, including Emma. "Emma, you should stay here," Mila said. "It's dangerous in this weather." "I can handle it," Emma said stubbornly. "Someone has to help." Mila was about to argue, but saw the determination in Emma's eyes. It reminded her of herself at that age. "All right, but you stay with an experienced person at all times. No wandering off." They divided into pairs and spread out through the forest. Mila went with Deputy Bradley. The rain was cold and constant, soaking through their jackets despite the waterproofing. The forest was dark and gloomy, with water dripping from every leaf and branch. They found the first water station overturned, the clean water spilled. Mila and Bradley righted it and refilled it from the tanks they carried. Then they moved to the next one. It was intact, but the water looked dirty. They emptied it and refilled it with clean water. At the third station, they found something disturbing. A dead deer lay nearby, clearly freshly dead. Its body showed signs of severe poisoning. "Poor thing," Bradley said. "It must have drunk from the creek before finding our station." Mila knelt by the deer, examining it. She felt sad, but also angry. This death could have been prevented if the contamination had never happened. If someone hadn't illegally dumped those barrels 15 years ago. "We need to move the body away from the water station," Mila said. "Scavengers will come for it, and we don't want them here." Together, they dragged the deer's body into the underbrush, away from the area where clean water was provided. It was hard, heavy work, made harder by the rain and mud. By the time they finished, both were exhausted and filthy. They checked 3 more stations before returning to town. The other teams had similar reports. Half the stations needed refilling or repair. Several dead animals had been found. The rain was making everything worse. That evening, a bigger problem emerged. Mr. Chen called Mila in a panic. "Mila, you need to come to the restaurant. Quick!" "What's wrong?" "There's a deer in my restaurant. It came right through the door, and it's destroying everything." Mila grabbed her tranquilizer gun and rushed over. Inside the restaurant, a large buck was indeed wreaking havoc. It had knocked over tables, broken dishes, and seemed completely disoriented. Several terrified customers huddled in a corner. "Everyone stay calm and stay back," Mila said, loading the tranquilizer gun. The deer turned toward her, its eyes wild and confused. It stamped its feet and lowered its head, showing its antlers. "It's going to charge," someone whispered. "No one move," Mila said quietly. She raised the gun, aimed carefully, and fired. The tranquilizer dart hit the deer in the shoulder. The animal staggered, confused, then slowly sank to the floor. "Is it dead?" Mr. Chen asked nervously. "Just sleeping," Mila said. "It'll wake up in a few hours. Call animal control to transport it to the clinic." What was wrong with it? Why did it come into town? The rain has disrupted everything. Animals are confused. Their usual water sources are contaminated or changed, and they're wandering into areas they normally avoid. This is going to get worse before it gets better. And it did get worse. Over the next week, poisoned animals appeared throughout the town. A raccoon in the grocery store, squirrels in the school, a fox in someone's backyard. Some were aggressive, others just confused and sick. Each one had to be caught, sedated, and taken for treatment, or, if too sick, euthanized. The town was on edge. Parents kept children inside. People were afraid to go out after dark. The peaceful little town of Pinewood was turning into a place of fear. Mayor Wright called another emergency meeting. "This can't continue," she said. "People are terrified. Tourism has stopped. Businesses are suffering. We need a solution." "The solution is to finish the cleanup," Dr. Foster said. "But that takes time." "How much time?" the mayor demanded. "Months, maybe 6 months to a year." "Unacceptable! We can't live like this for a year." "What do you want us to do?" Dr. Foster asked, frustrated. "We're working as fast as we can." "I don't know, but something has to change." Everyone looked at Mila again. She felt the weight of their expectations. They wanted her to solve this, to make it better somehow. But she didn't have a magic solution. "We need to do 2 things," Mila said slowly, thinking it through. "First, increase security in town. Set up barriers and patrols to keep animals from wandering in. Second, actively go into the forest and capture affected animals before they reach town. Proactive instead of reactive." "That would require a lot more people," Sheriff Wilson said. Then we need more people, Mila said. We need to hire professional wildlife controllers from other areas. We need more equipment. We need a bigger operation. That costs money, Mayor Wright said. Less money than losing all your tourism and having people live in fear, Mila pointed out. This is an investment in the town's future and safety. The mayor was quiet for a moment, then nodded. All right. I'll find the money. You organize what you need. Over the next few days, Mila worked frantically to expand the operation again. She contacted professional wildlife control companies and hired 6 experienced controllers. She ordered more equipment, including better tranquilizer guns, nets, cages, and protective gear. She set up a second rehabilitation center to handle the increased number of animals. The town also set up barriers at the main entry points from the forest. These weren't solid walls, but rather deterrents. Lights, noisemakers, and scent barriers that would discourage animals from entering. Sheriff Wilson organized patrol teams to watch these areas at night. Meanwhile, Mila led teams deep into the forest to find and capture affected animals before they could reach town. This was dangerous work. The animals were unpredictable, and the forest was difficult terrain, especially after all the rain. One day, Mila's team found a bear. It was a large adult male, maybe 300 kilograms, and it was clearly poisoned. It moved in the same jerky, confused way other affected animals did, and it was heading toward town. What do we do? Asked one of the professional controllers, a man named Rick. That's too big to tranquilize safely in the wild. If we don't use enough, it'll just get angry. If we use too much, it might die. Mila felt her heart racing. A bear, just like in her nightmare. But this was real, and she had to deal with it. We need to turn it away from town, she said, keeping her voice steady despite her fear. Make noise, scare it back into the deep forest. That's risky. If it charges. I know the risk, Mila said, but we can't let it reach town. There are children there. They carefully positioned themselves between the bear and the town. Then they started making noise, shouting, banging pots, waving arms. The bear stopped, confused. It swung its massive head toward them. Keep making noise, Mila called. Look big! Dominant! The bear took a step toward them. Mila's legs wanted to run, but she forced herself to stand firm. She remembered her training from years ago. Bears usually don't want to fight. They want to avoid conflict. You just have to convince them you're more trouble than you're worth. Go! Get out of here! She shouted at the bear, waving her arms wildly. The bear hesitated. Then, slowly, it turned and walked away, back into the deep forest. Mila let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. That was incredibly brave, Rick said. Or incredibly crazy. I'm not sure which. Maybe both, Mila admitted, her hands shaking. But she had done it. She had faced a bear and not frozen. She had protected others. The nightmare had not come true. That evening, Emma found Mila sitting alone in the command center, staring at nothing. Are you okay, Miss Mila? Emma asked. I faced a bear today, Mila said quietly. I heard. Everyone's talking about it. They say you were amazing. I was terrified. But you did it anyway. That's what makes you a hero. Mila looked at Emma. I'm not a hero. I'm just doing my job. Heroes always say that, Emma said with a smile. But you are. You're my hero anyway. You taught me that caring about something is worth the fear. That's important. After Emma left, Mila thought about those words. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe being a hero wasn't about being unafraid. It was about caring enough to act, despite the fear. And maybe, just maybe, she was becoming that person. 2 months into the crisis, Mila received an unexpected visitor. A man in his 60s, well-dressed in a business suit, appeared at the command center. He looked uncomfortable and nervous. "Are you Mila?" he asked. "Yes, can I help you?" "My name is Robert Harrison. I need to talk to you about the contamination." Mila stared at him. Harrison. Like Harrison Manufacturing, the company that had created this mess. "Are you related to the owners?" she asked coldly. "I'm the son of Thomas Harrison, who founded the company." "Please, I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I have information that might help." Despite her anger, Mila was curious. "Come into my office." They sat down in the small office Mila had claimed in the town hall. Robert Harrison looked at his hands, clearly struggling with what to say. "My father died 5 years ago," he began. "He went to prison for fraud, and it killed him. He had a heart attack in his cell. Before he died, he told me something. He said there was more waste than anyone knew about. Not just the barrels you found, but more." He felt guilty about it. "More waste?" Mila asked, alarmed. "Where?" He didn't say exactly, but he mentioned another site deeper in the forest. He said they dumped there first, before the site you found. He wanted me to tell someone, but I was ashamed. I didn't want to be connected to what he did. So I said nothing." "You said nothing?" Mila's voice was sharp. "Animals have been dying. The environment is ruined, and you said nothing because you were ashamed?" I know it was wrong. That's why I'm here now. I can't live with this anymore. You need to find that other site and clean it up too." Mila wanted to be angry, but she saw genuine remorse in the man's eyes. He had made a terrible choice, but he was trying to fix it now. "Do you have any idea where this site might be?" "Not exactly. But my father mentioned it was near an old logging road, about 5 miles north of the factory site. There was a ravine where they dumped the barrels and covered them with dirt." Mila stood up immediately. "We need to find this. Today." She called Sheriff Wilson, Dr. Foster, and Jake. Within an hour, they were in the forest with Robert Harrison, searching for the old logging road. It was overgrown and barely visible, but Robert remembered some landmarks from when he was young and had visited the factory. They hiked for 2 hours before Robert pointed. "There. That ravine. I remember playing near here as a child, before they started dumping." The ravine was a natural depression in the land, now filled with trees and undergrowth. But when they started examining it closely, they found disturbing signs. Areas where trees grew stunted and twisted, patches where nothing grew at all, and the smell. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear what inspired you the most, and where in the world are you watching from? Let us know below. They hurried back to town. Sheriff Wilson immediately started making calls. Mila went to the clinic to give Dr. Peterson the water samples. The rest of the evening was a blur of activity. The sheriff put out a warning to all residents about the contaminated water. The state environmental agency was contacted. Specialists would arrive tomorrow to assess the situation and remove the barrels. That night, Mila sat in her apartment, exhausted. She had done it. She had gone into the forest, investigated like she used to, and found the problem. She had even faced an aggressive animal without having a panic attack. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. Maybe she could do this after all. But the investigation was just beginning. Finding the source was one thing. Cleaning it up and saving the animals was another. Mila knew the hard work was still ahead.
The next morning, Pinewood was in an uproar. Everyone had heard about the toxic barrels in the forest. People were worried about their water, their pets, their children. The local newspaper, the Pinewood Gazette, had the story on the front page with a dramatic headline, "Toxic Waste Threatens Town." Mila arrived at the town hall for an emergency meeting. Sheriff Wilson had called together town officials, business owners, and concerned citizens. The room was packed. Mila stood at the back, trying to be invisible. but Sarah Henderson spotted her. "Mila, there you are!" Sarah grabbed her arm and pulled her forward. "You need to be up front. You're the expert." "I'm not," Mila started to say, but Sarah wouldn't listen. Mayor Jennifer Wright, a stern woman in her 50s with short gray hair, started the meeting. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. As you've heard, we have a serious environmental crisis. Sheriff Wilson will explain the situation." The sheriff stood up and described what they had found in the forest: the contaminated creek, the dead animals, the illegal barrels. People gasped and whispered to each other. "This is terrible," someone shouted. "Who did this?" "We're investigating," Sheriff Wilson said. "The barrels are old, maybe 10 or 15 years. They might have been dumped here before most of us even moved to Pinewood. But right now, our priority is dealing with the contamination." "What about our water?" asked Mr. Chen. "Is it safe to drink?" "We're testing all the water sources," the mayor said. "The town water system comes from a different aquifer, not connected to the creek, so it should be safe. But if you have a private well in the northeast area, you should not use that water until we finish testing." "What about the animals?" Emma asked from the crowd. She looked upset. "Can we help them?" Everyone turned to look at Mila. She felt dozens of eyes on her and wanted to disappear. But then she thought about those sick animals, about the dead fish in the creek, about the raccoon that had tried to attack them. Someone had to speak for them. She stood up. "The animals are being poisoned by the contaminated water," she said, her voice steady. "We found the source, but the damage is already done for many animals. Some will recover if we can stop the contamination quickly. Others are too sick and will die." "That's horrible," Mrs. Henderson said, tears in her eyes. "Can't we save them?" a young boy asked. "We can try," Mila said, "but it's not simple. First, we need to remove the toxic barrels and clean up the contaminated soil. That's specialized work that requires experts. Second, we need to provide clean water sources for the forest animals so they stop drinking from the creek. Third, we should catch and treat as many sick animals as we can." "That sounds like a big job," Mayor Wright said. "Can it be done?" "Yes, but we need help. We need the state environmental agency, wildlife specialists, and veterinarians, and we need volunteers." "I'll volunteer," Emma said immediately. Several other people raised their hands too. "Thank you," Mila said, feeling a warmth in her chest. "But volunteers need to be careful. These animals are sick and dangerous. They don't behave normally." The meeting continued for 2 hours. Plans were made, tasks were assigned, and resources were organized. Mayor Wright put Mila in charge of the wildlife response team, despite Mila's protests. "You found the problem, you understand it, and people trust you," the mayor said firmly. "Whether you like it or not, you're our expert. Will you do this?" Mila looked at all the worried faces around the room. She thought about running away, about going back to her quiet life selling fish. But she knew she couldn't, not anymore. "Yes," she said, "I'll do it." The crowd applauded. Mila felt embarrassed, but also something else. Pride. She had forgotten what it felt like to be needed, to use her skills for something important. After the meeting, people came up to thank her and ask questions. Dr. Peterson wanted to coordinate treatment plans. Jake and Lisa from Animal Control wanted her advice on safety procedures. Emma and several other young people wanted to volunteer for the wildlife team. "Can I really help?" Emma asked eagerly. "I know I'm young, but I'm good at following instructions, and I really care about animals." "We'll need all kinds of help," Mila said. "Not just direct work with animals. We'll need people to organize supplies, monitor affected areas, educate the public, and record data. Yes, you can help." Emma beamed. "Thank you, Miss Mila." "I mean, Dr. Mila? What should I call you?" "Just Mila is fine." "Okay, I'll tell my friends. We can all help." As Emma ran off excitedly, Sheriff Wilson came over. You did good today, Mila. Real good. I just told them what needs to be done, Mila said. That's leadership, the sheriff said. Exactly what we need. The state environmental team is arriving this afternoon. They want to meet with you. Me? Why? Because you're the one who found the contamination and understands its effects. You're the local expert now, local expert. The words felt strange. Mila had been an expert once, internationally recognized, published in journals, consulted by governments. Then she had become just the fish lady. Now she was being called an expert again. It was scary and exciting at the same time. That afternoon, 3 specialists from the State Environmental Protection Agency arrived. They wore professional clothing and carried lots of equipment. Their leader was Dr. Amanda Foster, a woman in her 30s with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. She shook Mila's hand firmly. You're the wildlife consultant? Dr. Foster asked, looking at Mila's casual clothes and fishy-smelling hands. I'm Mila. I found the contamination site. Dr. Foster raised an eyebrow. And your qualifications? Mila hesitated. She didn't want to talk about her past. I have experience with wildlife health issues. What kind of experience? Sheriff Wilson stepped in. Mila has specialized training in wildlife biology and animal health. She's the one who identified this as environmental poisoning instead of rabies. Without her, we might still be looking for a sick animal instead of the real cause. Dr. Foster looked skeptical, but nodded. Well, we'll need your local knowledge. Can you take us to the contamination site? They drove to the forest and hiked to the spring where the barrels were. Dr. Foster and her team examined everything with scientific precision. They took soil samples, water samples, air samples. They used special equipment to measure contamination levels. They photographed everything from multiple angles. This is bad, Dr. Foster said after an hour. These barrels contain industrial solvents, probably from some manufacturing process. They're full of chemicals like trichloroethylene and benzene, very toxic, and they've been leaking into the groundwater for years. How long will it take to clean up? Mila asked. Months, maybe longer. We'll need to excavate the contaminated soil, remove it to a proper disposal facility, and monitor the groundwater. This is a major remediation project. What about right now? Can we do anything to help the animals immediately? Dr. Foster looked surprised. Most people ask about human safety first. The water system is separate, Mila said. People are safe for now, but animals are dying every day. You really care about them, don't you? Dr. Foster said, her expression softening slightly. All right. The fastest thing is to fence off this area so animals can't access the contaminated water. Then we should set up clean water sources nearby. The creek will remain contaminated for a while, but if animals have an alternative, they'll use it. That's a good plan, Mila agreed. They discussed more details. Dr. Foster's team would start work tomorrow on containing the contamination. Meanwhile, Mila and her volunteer team would focus on helping the animals. It was a huge job, but it felt good to have a plan. As they walked back to town, Dr. Foster said casually, You know a lot about this for a local consultant. Where did you train? Various places, Mila said vaguely. I've worked in the field before. Which field? Wildlife biology? Environmental science? Both, Mila admitted. I was a wildlife conservation specialist for several years. I worked in different countries, mostly with endangered species and habitat protection. Really? Dr. Foster looked impressed. Why did you stop? Personal reasons, Mila said, her tone making it clear she didn't want to discuss it. Dr. Foster nodded, understanding. Well, it's lucky for this town that you're here. We need people who understand both the science and the animals. That evening, Mila met with her volunteer team in the town library. About 20 people had come, ranging from teenagers like Emma to retirees like Mr. Rodriguez. They were eager but nervous. "Thank you all for volunteering," Mila said. "This work is important, but it's also potentially dangerous. Poisoned animals don't behave normally. They can be aggressive and unpredictable. Safety must be our first priority." She spent an hour training them how to recognize poisoned animals, how to approach them safely, when to call for help instead of trying to handle an animal yourself, how to use protective equipment, how to report and record sightings. "We'll work in teams," Mila explained. "No one goes into the forest alone. Each team has at least one person with animal handling experience. We'll have radios to communicate and vehicles ready if someone needs medical help." "What exactly will we be doing?" asked Peter, a man in his 40s who worked at the post office. "Several things. First, monitoring. We need to know how many animals are affected and where they are. Second, setting up clean water stations throughout the forest. Third, catching sick animals for treatment when possible. Fourth, documenting everything so we can learn from this." "Can we really save them?" Emma asked. "The animals that are already sick?" Mila was honest. "Some of them, yes. If they haven't been exposed to too much contamination, treatment can help. But others are too sick, and the kindest thing we can do is end their suffering quickly and painlessly. That's hard, but it's part of the job." The room was quiet. This wasn't easy or fun work. It was difficult and sad. But it was necessary. "I understand if some of you want to change your minds," Mila said. "There's no shame in that. This isn't for everyone. No one left. They all stayed, determined to help." "All right then," Mila said, feeling a surge of respect for these volunteers. "We start tomorrow morning. Get a good night's sleep. You'll need it." As everyone left, Emma stayed behind. "Miss Mila, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you really come to Pinewood? I mean, you clearly know so much about animals and science. Why are you selling fish in a small town?" Mila was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Sometimes people need to start over, Emma. They need a simpler life, a safer life. But running away doesn't solve everything. Eventually, you have to face what you're afraid of." "Are you afraid?" "Terrified," Mila admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." That's what courage really is. Not being unafraid, but doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Emma smiled. "You're pretty cool, Miss Mila." "Thank you, Emma. Now go home. Tomorrow will be a long day." That night, Mila didn't have nightmares. Instead, she dreamed of clean water and healthy animals. Maybe, just maybe, she could make that dream real. Chapter 5. Operation Rescue. The next morning, Mila's volunteer team assembled at the edge of the forest at dawn. They looked like a strange army, wearing mismatched protective gear and carrying water containers, equipment, and determination. Dr. Peterson was there with his veterinary supplies. Jake and Lisa brought animal control equipment. Sheriff Wilson had assigned Deputy Bradley to help coordinate safety, and 20 volunteers stood ready to work. "All right, everyone," Mila said, spreading a map on the hood of a truck. "We're dividing into 4 teams. Team 1 will set up water stations. Team 2 will monitor and document animal sightings. Team 3 will handle animal rescue and treatment. Team 4 will mark contaminated areas with warning signs." She assigned people based on their skills and comfort levels. Emma was on the monitoring team, which made her happy. Mr. Rodriguez and several other strong volunteers were on the water station team. Dr. Peterson led the treatment team with Mila's help. "Remember," Mila said, "safety first. If you see an aggressive animal, back away and call for help. No heroics. We're here to help, not to get hurt." The team spread out into the forest. Mila went with the treatment team, carrying a tranquilizer gun that Dr. Peterson had obtained from the State Wildlife Department. She hadn't held one in 5 years. Her hands shook slightly as she checked it. "Are you okay?" Dr. Peterson asked quietly. "Just nervous," Mila said. "It's been a while." But you still remember how? Yes. Some things you don't forget. They walked along the creek, searching for affected animals. It didn't take long. They found a raccoon stumbling along the bank, clearly sick. Mila observed it from a distance. "It's badly poisoned," she said softly. "Look at how it moves. Its nervous system is severely damaged." "Can we save it?" asked one of the volunteers, a young man named David. Mila was quiet for a moment, watching the raccoon. She saw its confusion, its suffering. "No," she said finally. "It's too far gone." The kindest thing is to end its pain. It was hard, but Mila had learned long ago that sometimes helping animals meant letting them go peacefully. She tranquilized the raccoon, and Dr. Peterson gave it an injection that stopped its heart painlessly. They buried it by the creek, marking the spot. "I hate this part," Dr. Peterson said. "Me too," Mila agreed, "but it's necessary." Over the next hours, they found more animals. Some were clearly dying and needed to be euthanized, but others showed early symptoms and could potentially recover. These they tranquilized, caged carefully, and brought back to Dr. Peterson's clinic for treatment. By midday, they had rescued 6 animals, 2 squirrels, a young fox, 2 more raccoons, and a barn owl with a broken wing, probably from flying into something while disoriented. It wasn't many, but it was something. The water station team had better news. They had set up 10 large water containers throughout the forest, filled with clean water. These were placed away from the contaminated creek, but in areas where animals would find them. "Hopefully, animals will smell the clean water and drink from these instead of the creek," Mr. Rodriguez reported. "We'll refill them every day." The monitoring team had documented over 30 sightings of affected animals, from small birds to several deer. Emma had even seen a bear in the distance, though thankfully it seemed healthy. "A bear?" Mila said, her heart skipping. "How big?" "Pretty big. It was just walking through, eating berries. It looked normal. Not sick or anything." Mila felt relief. Bears were dangerous even when healthy. A poisoned bear would be terrifying. She made a note to monitor that area carefully. The marking team had put up signs warning people about the contamination. Danger, contaminated water, do not drink, do not swim, keep pets away. The signs were bright yellow and impossible to miss. That afternoon, Dr. Foster's environmental team arrived with heavy equipment. They had barricades, excavators, and workers in full hazmat suits. They looked like they were preparing for a war against pollution, which in a way they were. "We're starting the excavation," Dr. Foster told Mila. "We'll remove the barrels and the contaminated soil around them. It'll be noisy, so it might scare the animals." "I'll have my teams move to other areas," Mila said. "We don't want to stress the animals more than necessary." For the next week, Mila and her volunteers worked every day. They rescued more animals, set up more water stations, and monitored the forest constantly. It was exhausting work. Mila got up before sunrise and often didn't finish until after dark. Her fish shop remained closed, watched by Sarah Henderson. Some days were discouraging. They found many dead animals, especially small ones like birds and rodents. The contamination had spread through the food chain, affecting predators that had eaten poisoned prey. But other days brought hope. A young deer they had rescued showed signs of recovery. Several birds regained their coordination and were released back to the wild. Emma proved to be an excellent volunteer. She was dedicated, careful, and good at spotting animals. One day she found a litter of raccoon babies hiding in a tree. Their mother was dead, poisoned by the creek. Emma called Mila immediately. "What should we do?" Emma asked. "They're so small and helpless." Mila looked at the baby raccoons. They were only a few weeks old, their eyes barely open. Without their mother, they would die. "We'll take them to Dr. Peterson. He can bottle feed them until they're old enough to survive on their own." Can I help take care of them? Emma asked hopefully. I think Dr. Peterson would appreciate that, Mila said with a smile. Emma's face lit up. She carefully placed the baby raccoons in a carrier and walked back to town, talking softly to them the whole way. Sheriff Wilson came by the forest several times to check on the operation. He was impressed by what he saw. You've organized this whole thing like a military operation, he said. Everyone knows their job, everything runs smoothly. You're a natural leader, Mila. I'm just doing what needs to be done, Mila said. That's what leaders do, the sheriff replied. One evening, as Mila was preparing to leave the forest, she heard shouting. She ran toward the sound and found David, one of the volunteers, backing away from a snarling fox. The fox was clearly poisoned, its movements uncoordinated, but its aggression real. Don't run, Mila called out. Move slowly. But David panicked and turned to run. The fox lunged. Mila didn't think. She grabbed a long branch and stepped between David and the fox, just like she had done with the raccoon before. Get back! She shouted at the fox, waving the branch. The animal hesitated, confused. Mila advanced, making herself look bigger and more threatening. Go! Get out of here! The fox stumbled backward, then turned and disappeared into the underbrush. David stood there, breathing hard, his face pale. Are you hurt? Mila asked. No, I'm sorry, I panicked. It's okay. Panic is natural, but you have to fight it. Remember your training. I will. Thank you for saving me. That's what teams are for, Mila said. We protect each other. But as she walked away, Mila realized something. She had faced another aggressive animal, and she hadn't frozen. She hadn't had a panic attack. She had acted on instinct and training, protecting someone else. Maybe she really was getting over her fear. That night, she looked at the old photograph on her wall. The young Mila standing next to the elephant looked confident and brave. Maybe that Mila wasn't gone. Maybe she was just hidden, waiting to come back. And maybe she was coming back now. Chapter 6. A Wider Problem. 2 weeks into the cleanup operation, Dr. Foster called an emergency meeting. She looked tired and worried. Mila, Sheriff Wilson, and Mayor Wright gathered in the town hall conference room. We have a problem, Dr. Foster said. A bigger problem than we thought. What do you mean? Mayor Wright asked. The contamination is worse than our initial assessment. When we excavated the barrels, we found they had been leaking for much longer than 10 or 15 years. The groundwater contamination extends much farther than we expected. Dr. Foster spread geological maps on the table. The groundwater here flows in this direction. She traced a line with her finger. That means the contamination isn't just affecting the creek. It's moving through the entire aquifer system. The aquifer that supplies the town's water? Sheriff Wilson asked, alarmed. No, fortunately that's separate. But it does supply several farms on the outskirts, and it feeds into other streams and wetlands. The affected area is probably 10 times larger than we originally thought. Mila studied the map. That would explain why we've seen affected animals over such a wide range. They're not all drinking from the same creek. They're drinking from multiple water sources, all connected underground. Exactly, Dr. Foster said. And there's something else. We analyzed the chemicals in the barrels. They match industrial solvents used by a company called Harrison Manufacturing. They had a factory about 15 miles from here, 20 years ago. Harrison Manufacturing, Mayor Wright said thoughtfully. I remember hearing about them. They made industrial parts. The factory closed down about 15 years ago after some kind of scandal. Financial fraud, Dr. Foster said. The owners went to jail. But now we know they were also illegally dumping toxic waste. They probably paid someone to haul it away, and instead of taking it to a proper disposal facility, that person dumped it in your forest. Can we find who did it? Sheriff Wilson asked. That's for you to investigate. My concern is the cleanup. This is going to take much longer and cost much more than originally estimated. We're talking months, maybe over a year, and millions of dollars. The town doesn't have that kind of money, Mayor Wright said, looking sick. The state can help, and will go after Harrison Manufacturing's remaining assets. But in the meantime, we need to expand our response. More teams, more equipment, a bigger area to monitor and treat. Everyone looked at Mila. She realized they were waiting for her to say something. She was the wildlife expert, the one who had been leading the animal rescue operation. We'll need more volunteers, Mila said slowly, thinking it through. And probably professional help. Can the state wildlife department send people? They're stretched thin with other problems, Dr. Foster said. But they might spare a few people. You'd still be doing most of the work.
Then we need to organize better. Set up a proper command center, create rotating shifts so volunteers don't burn out, establish supply chains for food and medicine for the rescued animals. This isn't a short-term emergency response anymore. It's a long-term recovery operation. Can you handle that? Mayor Wright asked. Mila wanted to say no. She wanted to go back to her quiet life. This was getting bigger and more complicated. But she looked at the map, at all the affected area, and thought about all the animals suffering there. She thought about Emma and the other volunteers who had worked so hard. She thought about the baby raccoons and the young fox recovering in Dr. Peterson's clinic. Yes, she said. I can handle it, but I'll need support from the town. Official authority to organize this operation, a budget for supplies, and cooperation from all departments. The morning sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink as Mila opened the door to her small fish shop. The salty smell of the ocean mixed with the fresh morning air. She breathed deeply and smiled. This was her life now, simple and peaceful, far away from the dangers she once faced. Mila was 48 years old, with gray streaks in her dark brown hair that she tied back in a practical ponytail. Her hands were strong from years of hard work, first in the wild and now with fish. Small scars covered her arms, reminders of a past she tried not to think about. The town of Pinewood was small, with only 3,000 people. It sat between the ocean and a large forest. Most people here worked in fishing, tourism, or the small shops along Main Street. Everyone knew everyone else. It was the kind of place where neighbors helped each other and strangers became friends quickly. Mila arranged the fish on ice in the display case. Fresh salmon, cod, and mackerel gleamed in the morning light. She had bought them from the fishing boats that came in at dawn. The fishermen knew her well now. They called her Fish Lady, with friendly smiles. "Good morning, Mila," called Mrs. Henderson, the owner of the bakery next door. She was a round, cheerful woman in her 60s who always wore a white apron covered in flour. "Good morning, Sarah," Mila called back. "How are your grandchildren?" "Growing like weeds," Sarah laughed. "Tommy lost another tooth yesterday. He looked so funny." Mila smiled. These simple conversations made her happy. No one here knew about her past, about who she used to be. They just knew her as the woman who sold fish and kept to herself. The first customer arrived at 8 o'clock. It was Mr. Chen, who owned the Chinese restaurant on Harbor Street. He bought fish from Mila 3 times a week. "Hello, Mila," he said, examining the salmon. "Very fresh today. I'll take 5 kilos. "Of course, Mr. Chen," Mila said, wrapping the fish carefully. "How is business?" "Very good. Many tourists this week. They all want to eat seafood." He smiled. "You should come to my restaurant sometime. I'll make you the best fish you ever tasted." "Maybe I will," Mila said, though she knew she probably wouldn't. She didn't go out much. Her small apartment above the shop was enough for her. As Mr. Chen left, Mila noticed something strange. A seagull landed on the windowsill outside, but it looked sick. Its feathers were messy, and it moved in a jerky, unnatural way. Then it flew away quickly, crashing into a wall before disappearing. Mila frowned. That was odd. Seagulls were usually very good at flying. Maybe it was just tired or hungry. She forgot about it as more customers arrived. By noon, she had sold most of her fish. She sat down on the stool behind the counter and ate a sandwich. The lunch break was her favorite time. The shop was quiet, and she could watch the boats in the harbor through the window. Pinewood Harbor was beautiful. Small fishing boats bobbed in the water, their colorful paint bright against the blue sea. Larger boats sat farther out, ready for longer fishing trips. Seabirds called and circled overhead, always looking for food. But Mila noticed more birds acting strangely. 3 gulls fought over nothing, making loud, angry sounds. Another bird hit a boat and fell into the water. Something was wrong, but Mila didn't know what. That afternoon, young Emma Johnson came to buy fish for her mother. Emma was 16, with red hair and freckles. She worked part-time at the library and always had a book in her bag. "Hi, Miss Mila," Emma said brightly. "Mom wants 2 mackerel for dinner." "Hello, Emma," Mila said, picking out the best fish. "How is school?" "Good. We're studying ecology in science class. It's really interesting. Did you know that forests have their own communication systems? Trees can warn each other about insects and diseases." "I didn't know that," Mila lied. She knew it very well, but she didn't want to talk about her past knowledge. That was from another life. "Yeah, it's so cool. I want to be a forest ranger someday," Emma said, her eyes shining with excitement. Mila felt a small pain in her chest. She had wanted to protect nature too once. "That's a good dream," she said quietly. "Nature needs people who care about it." Emma paid and left, waving goodbye. Mila watched her go, thinking about dreams and how they could change. 5 years ago, she had been at the top of her career. Now she sold fish in a small town. Life was strange.
As evening approached, Mila closed the shop. She cleaned the counter, washed the display case, and locked the door. Then she climbed the stairs to her apartment. The apartment was small but comfortable. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom, and a living room, with a window that looked out over the harbor. Mila didn't have much furniture, just what she needed. On one wall hung a single photograph. It showed a younger Mila, maybe 30 years old, standing next to a tranquilized elephant in Africa. She was smiling, wearing a khaki uniform, holding a medical kit. A colleague stood beside her, also smiling. Mila rarely looked at that photograph anymore. It hurt too much. That woman in the picture seemed like a stranger now, someone brave and confident, someone who wasn't afraid. She made a simple dinner of rice and vegetables, ate while watching the sunset, and then went to bed early. Tomorrow would be the same as today, and the day after would be the same as tomorrow. That was fine with Mila. Safe and boring was better than dangerous and exciting. But that night, she had the dream again. The same dream that had haunted her for 5 years. She was in the forest, approaching a wounded bear. The bear looked hurt and weak. Mila moved closer with her medical bag, wanting to help. Then suddenly, the bear roared and attacked. Sharp claws, terrible pain, blood everywhere. Mila woke up sweating and shaking. She sat up in bed, breathing hard. Her old scars ached. She touched the biggest one, a long mark across her left shoulder where the bear's claws had torn through her flesh. The doctor said she was lucky to be alive. Lucky. Mila didn't feel lucky. She got up and drank some water, looking out at the dark harbor. The moon reflected on the water. Everything looked peaceful. But Mila couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Maybe it was just the dream, or maybe it was those strange birds. She went back to bed but couldn't sleep for a long time. When she finally did, she dreamed of animals with red eyes running through a dark forest. The next morning started normally. Mila opened her shop, arranged the fish, and greeted her customers. But as the day went on, she heard more and more unusual stories. "Did you hear about the miller's dog?" Mrs. Henderson asked as she bought some cod. "It bit their son yesterday. Just ran up and bit him on the leg for no reason. That dog was always so gentle." "Is the boy okay?" Mila asked, concerned. "He's fine, just a small bite." But they had to take the dog to the vet. Dr. Peterson said the dog was acting very aggressive and confused. Later, Mr. Rodriguez from the hardware store came in. "Mila, have you noticed anything weird about the animals lately?" "What do you mean?" Mila asked, though she had a feeling she knew. "Well, yesterday a raccoon walked right into my store in broad daylight. Didn't even seem afraid of people. It knocked over a whole shelf before I chased it out. And this morning, I saw a deer standing in the middle of Main Street, just staring at nothing. When cars honked, it didn't move. Someone had to call animal control." Mila felt a cold worry growing in her stomach. "That does sound strange." "Yeah. My wife says maybe they're sick or something. I hope it's not rabies. We haven't had a rabies outbreak here in 20 years. After Mr. Rodriguez left, Mila couldn't focus on her work. She kept thinking about the strange animal behavior, the seagulls, the dog, the raccoon, the deer. In her old life, she would have known what to do. She would have investigated immediately. But that was her old life. She wasn't a wildlife expert anymore. She sold fish. That was all. Still, the worry wouldn't go away. At lunchtime, Mila walked down to the town library. It was a small building with old wooden shelves full of books. Emma was working at the front desk. "Hi, Miss Mila," Emma said, surprised. "Do you need a book?" "Actually, I was wondering if you have any books about animal diseases or behavior," Mila said. Emma's eyes lit up. "Oh, because of all the weird stuff happening? Yeah, everyone's talking about it." "Let me show you." She led Mila to the science section and pulled out several books. "We have these about wildlife biology and animal behavior, and this one is about diseases that affect animals." "Thank you, Emma," Mila said, taking the books to a table. For the next hour, Mila read. She tried to tell herself she was just curious, not getting involved, but her trained mind couldn't help analyzing the symptoms: aggressive behavior, confusion, lack of fear of humans, uncoordinated movements. These could indicate several things: rabies, distemper, poisoning, or neurological damage from some environmental factor. Rabies was the most obvious answer, but something felt wrong about that. Rabies usually affected mammals, not birds, and the outbreak seemed too sudden and widespread. Rabies spread slowly from animal to animal through bites. Poisoning was possible. Maybe someone had put out rat poison, and animals were eating the poisoned rats. But that wouldn't explain the birds or the deer. Mila closed the books, frustrated. She needed more information. She needed to see the affected animals herself, examine them, run tests. But she couldn't do that. She wasn't qualified anymore. She had given up that life. Or had she? The truth was, Mila had left her career, but her knowledge hadn't left her. Years of training and experience didn't just disappear. She knew animals better than anyone else in this town, maybe better than anyone in the whole region. But the fear was still there, like a heavy weight on her chest. What if she tried to help and failed? What if she got hurt again? What if an animal attacked her? Mila returned the books to Emma and walked back to her shop. All afternoon, she debated with herself. Should she get involved or mind her own business? That evening, the decision was made for her. Sheriff Tom Wilson came to her shop just as she was closing. Sheriff Wilson was a big man in his 50s, with a gray mustache and kind eyes. He had been sheriff of Pinewood for 15 years. "Evening, Mila," he said, touching his hat. "Evening, Sheriff. What can I do for you?" "Well, I've got a situation, and I'm hoping you might have some ideas." He looked uncomfortable. "See, we've got animals acting strange all over town. Dogs biting people, Wild animals coming into town, birds flying into windows. Just today, a fox wandered into the elementary school playground. A fox, in the middle of the day. We had to evacuate the kids. Was anyone hurt? Mila asked quickly. No, thank God. But this can't continue. We've called the state wildlife department, but they can't send anyone for 3 days. I heard from Sarah Henderson that you know a lot about animals. Mila felt her heart beat faster. Sarah talks too much. Maybe so, but am I wrong? You do know about animals, don't you? Mila was silent for a moment. Then she said, I used to work with wildlife. A long time ago. Well, right now, you're the closest thing we have to an expert. I'm not asking you to do anything dangerous. I just need advice. What do you think is causing this? Mila looked at the sheriff's worried face. She thought about Emma and all the other children in town. She thought about the people who had become her friends over the past 5 years. Could she really stand by and do nothing? It could be several things, she said slowly. Rabies is the first thought, but the pattern is wrong. It's affecting too many different species too quickly. I think we should consider environmental poisoning. Poisoning? You mean like chemicals? Maybe. Or contaminated water, or toxic plants. Something in the environment that's affecting the animals' nervous systems. Sheriff Wilson nodded seriously. That makes sense. What should we do? First, we need to keep people safe. Tell everyone to stay away from wild animals, even if they look harmless. Don't try to help injured animals or feed them. Keep pets inside. Second, we should try to catch some of the affected animals and have them tested. A vet can do blood work and look for toxins. Dr. Peterson is our only vet, and he's overwhelmed right now. Could you help him? Mila hesitated. I'm not sure. Please, Mila. People are scared. Children are scared. We need someone who knows what they're doing. Mila closed her eyes. Images flashed through her mind. The wounded bear, the attack, the hospital, the long recovery, the nightmares, but also other memories. Successfully treating a poisoned elephant, saving a baby gorilla from a trap, the satisfaction of helping animals, of making a difference. Okay, she heard herself say, I'll help. But I'm not making any promises. The sheriff's face flooded with relief. Thank you, Mila. Really, thank you. Can you come to the clinic tomorrow morning? I'll bring Dr. Peterson and some of the affected animals. I'll be there, Mila said. After the sheriff left, Mila locked her shop and went upstairs. She felt scared, but also something else. A small spark of the old feeling, the old purpose. Maybe she could do this. Maybe she could help without getting hurt. Maybe it was time to face her fears. She didn't sleep well that night either, but this time it wasn't just because of nightmares. It was also because her mind was working, planning, remembering everything she knew about animal diseases and environmental toxins. Tomorrow, she would return to her old life, at least for a little while. She just hoped she was ready. Dr. Peterson's veterinary clinic was on the edge of town, a small white building with a fenced yard behind it. When Mila arrived the next morning, several vehicles were already parked outside. Sheriff Wilson's car, the animal control van, and a pickup truck. Mila took a deep breath before going inside. Her heart was pounding. She hadn't been in a professional setting like this in 5 years. What if she had forgotten important things? What if she made a mistake? But she pushed those thoughts away and opened the door. The clinic's waiting room was small and simple, with a few chairs and posters about pet care on the walls. Dr. Peterson came out from the back room immediately. He was a thin man in his 40s with glasses and a worried expression. "You must be Mila," he said, shaking her hand. "Thank you for coming. I really need help with this situation." "I'll do what I can," Mila said. "What do you have so far?" "Come to the back. I'll show you." The back room contained examination tables, cages with animals, and medical equipment. Sheriff Wilson was there, along with 2 animal control officers Mila didn't know. "Mila, good morning," the sheriff said. "These are Officers Jake Miller and Lisa Chen from Animal Control." "Nice to meet you," Mila said, shaking their hands. She felt awkward in her regular clothes. Everyone else looked official in their uniforms. "Dr. Peterson has 6 animals here that showed strange behavior," Sheriff Wilson explained. "A dog, 2 raccoons, a fox, 3 squirrels, and some birds." "The dog is the Miller's pet," Dr. Peterson said. "The others were caught by animal control yesterday and this morning. They're all showing similar symptoms: aggression, confusion, lack of coordination, and no fear of humans." "Can I examine them?" Mila asked. "Of course. I have them separated for safety." Dr. Peterson showed Mila each animal. The dog, a golden retriever named Max, lay in a cage looking miserable. His eyes were glassy, and he flinched at every sound. The raccoons were worse. They moved in jerky, unnatural ways, and their breathing was heavy. The fox looked confused, bumping into the sides of its cage. Mila felt her training take over. She observed each animal carefully, noting their symptoms. She asked Dr. Peterson about their temperature, heart rate, and other vital signs. She looked at their eyes, checked their reflexes, and watched how they moved. "What do you think?" Dr. Peterson asked after they had examined all the animals. "These aren't rabies symptoms," Mila said confidently. "Rabies causes extreme fear of water and lots of saliva. These animals don't have that. They're showing signs of neurological damage, which could mean poisoning or exposure to toxic substances." "What kind of substances?" Sheriff Wilson asked. "It could be many things. Pesticides? Heavy metals? Industrial chemicals. We need to do blood tests to find out exactly what." "I can do basic blood work here," Dr. Peterson said. "But for detailed toxicology, we'd need to send samples to the state laboratory. That takes several days." "Then we should start right away," Mila said. "In the meantime, I want to look at where these animals were found. Environmental poisoning usually has a source. If we can find it, we can stop it." "Good idea," Sheriff Wilson said. "Jake and Lisa, can you show Mila the locations?" "Sure," Jake said. He was a young man, maybe 25, with red hair. "We've been keeping records. Most of the affected animals were found in the northeast part of town, near the forest." "That's interesting," Mila said. "It suggests the source is somewhere in or near the forest." They spread a map of pinewood on the examination table. Lisa, a woman in her 30s with short black hair, marked all the locations where strange animals had been seen or caught. As Mila looked at the map, a pattern emerged. Almost all the incidents were clustered in a specific area. "Here," Mila pointed. "This is the center. Whatever is causing this, it's probably within a few kilometers of this spot."
"That's mostly forest," Sheriff Wilson said. "Some hiking trails, a few old buildings, and the creek that runs through there." "The creek," Mila said thoughtfully. "Water is often how toxins spread. Animals drink from it, and if it's contaminated, they all get poisoned." "So we should check the creek?" Jake asked. "Yes, but carefully. If there's something toxic there, we don't want to get exposed ourselves." "I can get protective equipment from the fire station," Sheriff Wilson said. "When do you want to go?" Mila felt a flutter of nervousness. Going into the forest, where animals were sick and acting unpredictably, where danger could be anywhere. But she forced herself to stay calm. "This afternoon," she said, "we shouldn't wait. The sooner we find the source, the sooner we can protect people and animals." The meeting broke up. Dr. Peterson would continue monitoring the animals and start blood tests. Sheriff Wilson would get equipment and arrange for a search team. Jake and Lisa would gather more information about recent incidents. Mila went back to her shop, but she couldn't focus on selling fish. Her mind was in investigation mode now, thinking about possible toxins and how to find them. She called Mrs. Henderson and asked her to watch the shop for the afternoon. "Of course, dear," Sarah said. "I heard you're helping with the animal problem." "That's wonderful." "I'm just giving advice," Mila said, but she knew it was more than that now. She was getting involved, really involved, for the first time in 5 years. At 2 o'clock, Mila met the others at the edge of the forest. Sheriff Wilson had brought protective gloves and boots for everyone. He also brought Tom Bradley, one of his deputies, a serious young man with dark hair. "Everyone ready?" the sheriff asked. Mila nodded, pulling on the gloves. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she hid it. "Let's follow the creek upstream. That's the most logical place to start." The group entered the forest. It was beautiful here, with tall pine trees and thick underbrush. Birds sang in the branches, though Mila noticed there seemed to be fewer than normal. The creek bubbled over rocks, looking clean and clear. They walked slowly, searching for anything unusual. Dead animals, strange smells, discolored water, any sign of contamination. For the first kilometer, they found nothing. Then Lisa pointed ahead. "Look at that." Several dead fish floated in a pool of the creek. Small fish, maybe trout, floating belly up in the water. "That's not good," Jake said. Mila knelt by the water, being careful not to touch it. The fish looked recently dead, their eyes still clear. "This is definitely a sign of poisoning. The creek is contaminated, but I don't see anything in the water," Deputy Bradley said. "No oil, no strange color, nothing." "Many toxins are invisible," Mila explained. "That's what makes them so dangerous. We need to take water samples and have them tested." Dr. Peterson had given them sample bottles. Mila carefully collected water from several spots along the creek, labeling each one. They continued upstream, finding more dead fish and, once, a dead squirrel lying near the water. "Poor thing," Lisa said sadly. "We need to find the source," Mila said, her determination growing. This was wrong, and she needed to fix it. They walked for another hour, following the creek deeper into the forest. The trees grew thicker here, and less sunlight reached the ground. Mila felt uncomfortable. The forest seemed too quiet, as if the animals sensed danger. Then they found it. The creek came from a spring that bubbled up from underground. But near the spring, hidden in the brush, was an old metal barrel. It was rusted and leaking, with a faded industrial label on the side. "What is that?" Sheriff Wilson asked. Mila moved closer, reading the label. "It's a chemical barrel." "The label is too faded to read completely, but I can see warning symbols. This is industrial waste." "Someone dumped toxic waste here?" Deputy Bradley said angrily. "That's illegal!" "Very illegal," Sheriff Wilson agreed. "And very dangerous. If that's leaking into the groundwater, it would contaminate the whole creek system." "There might be more barrels," Mila said, looking around. "This looks like an illegal dumping site." They searched the area and found 3 more barrels, all old and leaking. 2 were half buried in the ground. It looked like someone had dumped them here years ago and tried to hide them. "This is serious," Sheriff Wilson said. "We need to call the Environmental Protection Agency and the state police. This is a major contamination." "And we need to warn everyone immediately," Mila added. "No one should drink water from wells in this area, and they should keep their pets away from the creek." As they stood there looking at the barrels, Mila heard a sound. A rustling in the bushes. Everyone turned. A large raccoon emerged from the undergrowth. It walked in the strange, jerky way Mila had seen before. But this raccoon looked even worse. Foam dripped from its mouth, and its eyes were wild. "Stay back," Mila said quietly. "Don't make sudden movements." But the raccoon didn't run away like a normal animal would. Instead, it moved toward them, making a terrible hissing sound. "It's going to attack," Jake said, backing away. "Everyone move slowly toward the trail," Mila instructed, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Don't run." They moved back carefully, but the raccoon followed. It was focused on them with an intensity that wasn't natural. The poisoning had affected its brain, making it aggressive and fearless. "What do we do?" Lisa asked nervously. Mila looked around and saw a fallen branch. She picked it up slowly. "If it attacks, I'll try to scare it away. Everyone else, keep moving back." The raccoon came closer. Mila's heart pounded. This was too familiar. An animal in distress, showing aggression, moving to attack, like the bear, like her nightmare. But this time was different. This time she was prepared, and she had others to protect. The raccoon suddenly rushed forward. Mila struck the ground hard with the branch, making a loud noise. "Go! Get away!" she shouted. The raccoon hesitated, confused. Mila struck the ground again, moving forward confidently despite her fear. The animal's brain was damaged, but the instinct to flee from a larger aggressive threat was still there. Finally, the raccoon turned and stumbled back into the forest. Mila lowered the branch, her hands shaking. She had faced an aggressive animal and hadn't frozen. She had protected others. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. "That was brave," Sheriff Wilson said. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Mila said, and she realized she meant it. "Let's get out of here and report this."